I was 22 years old and working alone on the overnight shift at a convenience store attached to a gas station in rural Missouri. It was one of those stations lost along the highway, with dense woods behind it and miles of nothing in every direction. Overnight traffic was almost always the same. Truck drivers stopping for coffee, the bathroom and cigarettes, or the occasional car speeding past without even pulling in. I worked that shift because it paid a little better and, honestly, almost nothing ever happened. The store was overly bright compared to the darkness outside, and the constant hum of the refrigerators and air conditioner helped pass the time. That summer night, the air was heavy and humid, and I was already tired, counting the hours until dawn. I was wiping down the counter for the third time, more out of boredom than necessity, when I heard the door chime ring. The man walked in without looking at me. That alone stood out because almost everyone at least nods when they come in, especially in the middle of the night. He was dirty, not just road dust or grease. His face, arms, and part of his shirt were covered in dark, uneven stains that still looked damp in places. Under the store's harsh white lights, it was hard to tell the exact color, but something was wrong. He didn't seem drunk or obviously injured. He wasn't staggering or groaning. He just walked straight to the back, pushed open the men's restroom door, and went in without saying a word. I stayed behind the counter, watching him through the reflection in the refrigerator doors. I heard the sink turn on almost immediately, water running far longer than someone would need just to wash their hands. My stomach tightened in a strange way, but I kept trying to rationalize it, telling myself he was just another guy off the road. The water kept running for several minutes. It wasn't the quick sound of someone washing up in a hurry. It was steady, controlled. At one point, I heard the paper towel dispenser being pulled several times in a row, that dry, repetitive sound. I thought about asking if everything was okay, but something stopped me. It wasn't clear fear, more a sense that interrupting him wouldn't be a good idea. Meanwhile, the rest of the store stayed the same. Refrigerators humming, a truck passing far off on the highway, the clock creeping toward 3 in the morning. When the water finally stopped, there was a brief silence. Then the toilet flushed. He came out of the bathroom with his face clean, his hands clean, his shirt still marked but less so. He walked past me without looking and went to the shelves like any other customer. He grabbed a coffee, a pack of cookies, and a pack of cigarettes, then set them on the counter carefully. I rang him up on autopilot, told him the total, and he paid in cash, crumpled bills without saying anything. He didn't seem nervous. He didn't seem rushed. His eyes were red but not swollen, like someone who had spent too long rubbing their face. He took his things, stuffed the change into his pocket, and left. The chime rang again and the door closed. I stared outside, expecting to see a car, a truck, anything. There was nothing. The station lot was empty, just the lights reflecting off the asphalt. For a moment, I thought he must have come on foot from the highway, which was already strange at that hour. I went back to wiping the counter, trying to shove the bad feeling to the back of my mind, telling myself that if something were really wrong, I would have noticed. About half an hour later, I went to clean the bathroom like I did every night. I grabbed the gloves and spray and pushed the door open. The smell hit me before I even turned on the light. It wasn't just old cleaner or sewage. It was a strong metallic smell, almost sweet, that didn't belong there. The sink was wet, the mirror covered in splashes like someone had washed their face over and over. The trash can felt far too heavy for its size. When I pulled the bag out, water leaked from the bottom, dripping onto the floor. Inside, the paper towels were soaked and stuck together, stained with that same dark color I'd seen on him when he came in. It wasn't mud. It didn't look like oil. The sink drain had debris caught in it, and the water drained slowly when I tried to rinse it. I stood there for a few seconds, breathing shallowly, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. I finished cleaning way too fast without any care, just wanting to get out of there. I went back to the counter and started staring at the external camera monitors, something I almost never did. I replayed the footage of the man entering. No car showed up. The video showed him appearing from the right side of the frame, coming out of the darkness behind the station from the direction of the woods. He walked to the door like he knew exactly where he was. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look around. He just went in. I replayed it again to be sure. That was it. No headlights. No vehicle. Just him, on foot, coming out of the woods. Not long after, the store phone rang. It was the manager asking if I'd seen anything unusual, because the police had called about a serious incident on the highway a few miles away earlier that morning. They didn't give details. I stared at the empty screen, thinking about the smell, the dripping trash bag, and the silence of the man while he washed his face. The manager said he'd talk to me more later, but asked me to write down anything I remembered about the customer. I hung up and sat there, staring at the automatic door, waiting for it to open again. It didn't. The rest of the night dragged on, slow and heavy. Every noise outside made me look at the monitor. Nothing. Around 5, I saw a police cruiser drive straight past the station without pulling in. Then another one. The sky started to lighten a little, that dirty blue before the sun comes up. I was exhausted, feeling like I'd spent the entire night holding my breath. When my shift ended, the manager arrived and asked me to show him the camera footage. He stayed silent while watching the clip of the man walking in on foot. He rewound it a few times, zoomed in as much as possible. He didn't comment right then, just asked me to write everything I remembered, including the smell and the condition of the bathroom. A few hours later, already at home, I got a message from him saying the police had confirmed a serious incident. That same night, miles down the road, near a secondary access point off the highway, also surrounded by woods. They didn't give details, only said the timing matched and the description of the man was compatible. I never saw anyone like him at the station again. No one ever came walking out of the woods. What stayed with me was the order of things. Coming in dirty, washing carefully, throwing things away, buying items like nothing had happened. And the detail that still doesn't fit is the silence. It wasn't haste or panic. It was method. Like he had stopped there just to clean what he needed before moving on. After that, I tried to go back to normal life, but that night wouldn't leave my head. I kept working at the station in the weeks that followed, and everything looked the same on the outside, but for me, the place had changed. The bathroom never felt like just a bathroom again. Whenever someone stayed in there too long, I paid attention to the sound of the water, to how the faucet was turned off. The metallic smell came back a few times faintly, probably in my head, but my body reacted before I could think it through. I started checking the cameras more often, especially the one that covered the back of the station where the woods began. At night, that dark stretch felt closer, like it wasn't just a physical boundary, but a place where anything could emerge without warning. A few days later, I saw a short article on a local news site about a serious incident on that highway, involving someone found injured near the woods. There weren't many details, just the approximate time and location. It was impossible not to connect the dots. I kept thinking about the man coming in dirty, the care he took washing his face and hands, the normal way he bought coffee and cookies afterward. It didn't feel like someone trying to escape. It felt like someone taking a break. To this day, what bothers me most isn't imagining what happened miles down the road, but remembering the calm inside that overly bright store in the middle of the night. He came in, cleaned himself, took care of what he needed, and walked back out on foot into the darkness of the woods, as if the station were just another stop along the way. After that, the police showed up at the station once during the afternoon. 2 uniformed officers asked simple questions, asked to see the camera footage, and wrote down times. They didn't tell me exactly what they were investigating. One of them asked if I was sure about the smell in the bathroom and whether it seemed like blood. I said I couldn't be certain, only that it was metallic and strong, unlike anything normal. They didn't react much, just exchanged a quick look. Before leaving, one of them asked which direction the man had gone when he left. I showed on the video that it was toward the woods. He thanked me and said to call if I saw anything similar again. I never did, but the question stayed with me. It didn't feel like curiosity, it felt like confirmation. A few weeks later, I asked to change shifts. I didn't officially give this story as the reason, I just said I was tired of nights. The manager understood. Even so, once in a while I'd pass by the station at night and look toward the dark stretch behind the building. Always empty, always silent. Nothing ever happened there again. No other incidents, no strange customers coming on foot. Still, to this day, when I walk into a public bathroom late at night and catch a smell that's off, that memory comes back in full. The water running too long, the soaked trash, The calm of someone cleaning their face before moving on, like it was just part of a routine. Over time, the memories blended into everyday life, but they never fully disappeared. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking about that night for no clear reason, just because some small detail pulled it back. The sound of water running too long in a public restroom, the way someone avoids eye contact, the excessive quiet of the early morning hours. All of it took on a different weight after that experience. I never knew exactly what happened on the highway that night, and maybe it's better that way. What became clear to me is that I saw someone in the middle of something far too serious for that bright, ordinary place. The station wasn't the beginning or the end. It was just a stop along the way. Looking back now, what bothers me most isn't the state he was in when he entered the store, or the vague news about the incident miles away. It's the normalcy. He didn't seem shocked or lost. He seemed like someone who knew exactly what he was doing, someone who just needed to clean up, discard what was no longer useful, and keep going. Whenever I think about it, I remember the image of him emerging from the darkness of the woods on foot, as if that station were somewhere he already knew. As if that night wasn't anything exceptional for him at all. And that's what still gives me chills. The idea that for some people, even the most serious things can fit perfectly into a quiet routine in the middle of the night, without anyone around immediately realizing it. Story 2. I was 31 years old when this happened and lived in western Kansas, in an area full of long, poorly lit rural roads. At the time, I worked at a grain warehouse and had taken an extra shift that ended well after midnight. It was summer, hot even at night, and all I wanted was to get home, take a shower, and sleep. The shortest route went along a narrow state highway, bordered by pasture land and low brush, with stretches where you can drive 10 or 15 minutes without seeing a single house. I knew that road well. I drove it almost every day, so I wasn't tense or expecting anything out of the ordinary. The radio was on low just to break the silence, and the headlights lit up that strip of asphalt that always looks the same in the middle of the night. It had to be close to 1 in the morning when I saw something on the shoulder up ahead. At first, I thought it might be an animal standing there, or someone with a broken-down car. I slowed down a bit and realized it was a man standing near the fence signaling with his hand. He was alone. There was no car, no phone light, nothing. As I got closer, I could see that he was dirty, his clothes torn in places with several scratches on his arms and face, like he'd been moving through brush. Even so, his posture didn't look like someone in distress. He wasn't waving frantically, he wasn't shouting. He just raised his hand slowly, waiting. My first instinct was to stop. It was automatic. Empty road, someone asking for help. But something about the whole scene started not to make sense in my head. When I got closer and rolled the window down just a little, he spoke to me in a tone far too calm for someone in that condition. He said he needed a ride up ahead, without specifying where. His voice didn't waver. There was no urgency. None of the desperation you'd expect from someone hurt in the middle of nowhere. His face was sweaty, with fresh scratches, but his eyes were alert, focused on me. As he talked, I noticed that one of his hands stayed hidden behind his right leg, holding something long and heavy. I couldn't see what it was, but the way he kept his arm rigid didn't seem natural. I asked if he was okay, if he needed me to call someone. He said no, that he just needed the ride. That's when I felt that cold drop in my stomach, a strange certainty that stopping completely would be a mistake. I said I couldn't help and started rolling the window back up. He didn't change his tone or get upset. He just took a step forward, as if he were going to come closer to the car. In that instant, I hit the gas. The car accelerated faster than I meant it to, and in the rearview mirror I saw him falling behind, still standing on the shoulder, not running, not shouting. My heart was pounding too hard, my hands slick on the steering wheel. I kept telling myself I'd done the right thing, that it was better not to risk it. Even so, the image of that hand hidden behind his leg wouldn't leave my head. That wasn't someone asking for help. It was someone waiting for me to make a specific decision. I drove for a few minutes trying to bring my adrenaline down. The road stayed empty, the asphalt lit only by the reach of the headlights, and the radio now seemed too loud. I checked the rearview mirror several times, expecting to see someone running after the car, or some light appearing out of nowhere. I saw nothing. I started to feel a little foolish, like I'd overreacted to what could have just been an injured guy needing help. Still, something didn't fit. His calm didn't match the situation, neither did the lack of any clear request. Up ahead meant nothing on a road that long. I kept driving, keeping my speed a bit higher than normal, just wanting to get out of that area. About 5 minutes later, coming out of a long curve, I saw something on the shoulder on the other side of the road. My body reacted before my mind understood what I was seeing. It was a man standing there in the same posture as before, raising his hand slowly. As I got closer, my stomach dropped. It was him, the same torn clothes, the same scratches visible even from a distance, the same calm way of standing. The only difference was the side of the road. It made no sense at all. There was no way he could have gotten there on foot in that amount of time, especially moving through the dense vegetation between the 2 points. There was no intersection, no parallel road. He was simply there as if he'd been placed ahead on purpose. In that moment, any doubt I still had vanished. I didn't slow down this time. I drove straight past, feeling a chill run up my arms when our eyes met for a second. He didn't try to approach the car or make any sudden movement. He just turned his head to follow me as I passed, as if checking something. In the rearview mirror, I saw him lower his arm slowly and return to a neutral stance, standing on the shoulder. I didn't speed off wildly. I didn't honk. I just kept going, my whole body tense, trying to understand how any of this was possible without panicking. The road ahead felt longer than ever, and I had the clear sense that this second appearance wasn't a repeated request for help. It was confirmation that I'd been deliberately chosen. I drove faster than I should have for the next few miles until I reached a more populated stretch near a small rural access road. Only when I saw lights from a distant farmhouse and a truck coming the opposite way did I manage to breathe a little easier. I pulled over onto the shoulder for a few seconds, the car still running, trying to calm my hands. I thought about calling the police, but I had no idea what I'd say. That a man appeared twice on the road, that he seemed to move too fast? It would sound ridiculous. I sat there listening to the engine, the distant sound of insects, and that unsettling feeling that someone had tried to isolate me on that long, empty road, choosing places with no exits and no witnesses. I didn't start driving again until my body felt like it was obeying me. I got home much later than usual, still in a state of alert. I parked in the garage and sat in the car for a few seconds with the engine off, just listening to the silence around me. Everything felt too normal after what had just happened. I went inside, locked the door, and went straight to take a shower, trying to wash the road off my skin. The hot water helped a little, but my mind kept returning to the details. The hand hidden behind his leg, the way he spoke without any urgency, and especially the fact that he'd appeared again up ahead, as if he'd calculated exactly where I'd be minutes later. It didn't feel improvised. It felt like a test I'd narrowly passed. In the days that followed, I avoided that road whenever I could, even if it meant a longer drive. I told the story to a coworker, laughing nervously, trying to downplay it. But as I talked, I realized my body was reacting all over again. He suggested it could have been someone using shortcuts through the brush, or even two different people. I tried to accept those explanations, but none of them fully fit. There were no quick trails there, no intersections, and the man was far too identical for it to be coincidence. To this day, what bothers me most isn't imagining what he was holding behind his leg, but the clear sense that the approach wasn't about a ride. It was about getting me to stop in the right place at the right time, far from any help. A few days later, I saw a small item on a local news site about a driver who'd called the police after encountering a man asking for help on that same road, around the same time. The article was vague and didn't name names. It just said the driver had felt threatened and driven away. Police didn't find anyone when they went to the location. That gave me a strange chill, because it confirmed I wasn't the only one who'd noticed something was wrong there. At the same time, it made it clear that no one had been able to explain what was happening. There was no mention of an attack or an arrest, just someone appearing and disappearing on that long, dark road, as if they knew the place and the timing far too well. As the weeks passed, the memory of that encounter became less intense, but it never truly disappeared. Sometimes, driving at night on other rural roads, I'd lower the radio without realizing it, just to hear better what was outside. Anyone standing on the shoulder immediately put my body on alert. I never stopped again for anyone asking for help on the road, and that still bothers me, because I know not everyone is a threat. Still, that particular night felt staged to leave me alone, without clear options, without witnesses. The sense was that someone was counting on my goodwill to create the right situation. Eventually, I stopped looking for logical explanations, not because none existed, but because none of them explained the whole picture. One isolated thing might have had a justification. Two appearances in the same pattern, at points impossible to reach in that interval of time, did not. What stuck with me most was realizing that he never really tried to persuade me. He didn't insist, he didn't beg, he didn't change his tone. It was as if the expected reaction was simple. I stopped the car. When that didn't happen, he just moved on to the next position. That road wasn't random. It was long, dark, with no houses, no cameras, no traffic. The ideal place for someone to test who would be willing to stop and who wouldn't. Today, whenever I get home late and have to drive roads like that, I think about it. Not about the man himself, but about the strategy. Someone who understands routine, timing, isolation. Someone who doesn't need to run or threaten, just wait for the wrong decision. I never knew who he was or what he was holding behind his leg that night. I never knew how he reached that second point on the road so quickly. What I do know is that the request for help wasn't really a request. It was an attempt to place me exactly where I shouldn't have been. And the fact that he appeared again, farther ahead, was the silent confirmation that it had all been planned from the start. Story 3. I was 28 years old when this happened, and I was traveling with my girlfriend through rural Texas. We were coming back from visiting her family and decided to split the trip into 2 days because driving straight through was exhausting. It was already late at night when we started looking for a place to sleep. Something simple just to shower and rest for a few hours. We ended up stopping at a cheap roadside motel, the kind shaped like a U, with all the rooms on the ground floor and the parking lot right in front of the doors. It wasn't a nice place, but it seemed functional. Low lighting, an old sign, almost complete silence around it. I checked in quickly with an older man at the desk who looked bored and tired. We took the key, went into the room, and locked the door without thinking much about it. The room was basic. A large bed, a loud air conditioner, worn carpet, and that vague smell of cleaning product mixed with something old. We took quick showers, ate some snacks we had in the car, and lay down. We were too exhausted to talk much. I remember thinking the place was too quiet. No noise from other guests, no doors slamming, nothing. Just the constant hum of the air conditioner and, once in a while, a car passing far off on the highway. It must have been around 2 in the morning when I woke up to a strange sound. Something metallic, low, repetitive, coming from the room door. At first, I thought it was someone walking down the walkway and accidentally hitting the handle. I stayed still, trying to understand whether the sound would repeat. A few seconds later, I heard it again, clearer this time. It was the sound of something sliding into the lock like a card or a piece of plastic. It wasn't a knock. It was a careful, slow movement, followed by a pause. My whole body snapped awake immediately. I looked at my girlfriend, who was still asleep, and listened. The sound came back, this time a little more insistent. Card going in, shifting, coming out. Then complete silence. No footsteps, no audible breathing, nothing. Just that strange pause, as if whoever was on the other side was waiting for a reaction. I slowly sat up in bed and stared at the door. The room lights were off, with only the faint glow of the motel sign leaking in through the curtain gaps. The air conditioner was still running, but it sounded far too loud now. The metallic noise came back a third time, followed by another long pause. It didn't sound like someone confused, trying to open the wrong room. It sounded like someone testing, patiently. The lock vibrated slightly with each attempt. My heart started pounding, and I felt that cold drop in my stomach that comes when something doesn't make sense. I gently shook my girlfriend and whispered that someone was at the door. She woke up startled but stayed silent when she heard the sound again. We sat on the bed without speaking, just listening. The card went into the lock again, this time with a bit more force, as if whoever was outside had adjusted the angle. The movement lasted a few seconds and stopped. Silence again. No footsteps moving away, no sign that the person had left. I thought about yelling, banging on the door, turning on the TV, anything to show the room was occupied. but something told me not to draw attention. The calmness of the movement didn't match someone drunk or lost. My girlfriend grabbed my arm tightly, her nails pressing into my skin. I could feel her body shaking, even though she wasn't making a sound. I slowly picked up my phone and lit the screen just enough to see the time. Almost 3 a.m. I thought about calling the front desk, but I imagined the phone ringing, someone answering on the other end, and the person at the door hearing everything. The card came back once more, now accompanied by a faint click, as if it had almost worked. The sound was followed by an even longer pause than the others. It felt like whoever was there was listening, assessing. I stared at the doorknob, waiting for any more forceful movement. Nothing. Just that heavy silence in the walkway, broken again by the careful sound of the card being pulled out. Time started to stretch in a strange way. Each attempt felt longer than the last, even if it was only a few seconds. The card went in, scraped, applied pressure, and came out, always with silent intervals between each movement. There was no rush, no nervousness. I began noticing small details that made me even more uneasy, like the fact that the person never missed the height of the lock. There was no fumbling. It was always straight to the right spot. That made me think whoever was out there had done this before, maybe many times. My mind started running toward possibilities I didn't want to fully form, so I forced myself to think of something simpler. Someone trying rooms at random. Even so, it didn't feel random. After another failed attempt, the card stopped completely. We stayed frozen, waiting to hear footsteps moving away down the walkway. Nothing. The silence was so complete that I could hear the faint buzz of the bathroom light fixture. My girlfriend brought her hand to her mouth to control her breathing. Seconds passed, maybe minutes, it was hard to tell. When the card touched the lock again, it was with less force, almost like a final test. The metal made a dull sound and the doorknob moved slightly but didn't turn. Then everything went quiet again. This time, for far too long to be just another normal pause. After that prolonged silence, I heard something that chilled me more than the card itself. A light weight pressing against the door, as if someone had leaned their body against it to listen more closely. It wasn't an impact. It was far too subtle. The wood made an almost imperceptible creak. My breathing went shallow and I had to focus not to make any noise. My girlfriend rested her forehead against my shoulder, and I could feel her heart racing. Neither of us moved. The door didn't shift again, but the presence on the other side felt far too close, like the person was standing there deciding what to do next. The walkway remained in absolute silence. After a few more seconds that felt far too long to be normal, we heard very light footsteps moving away. It wasn't the clear sound of someone walking normally. They were controlled steps, almost dragged, moving slowly away from the door. We stayed still, not celebrating, not relaxing, waiting for the sound to disappear completely. When we couldn't hear anything anymore, we stayed motionless for a while longer, just to be sure. I slowly got up and went to the window, pulling the curtain back as little as possible. The parking lot was almost empty, lit by 2 weak lights. I didn't see anyone walking, no car running, nothing to explain what had just happened. Even so, the feeling that someone was still nearby didn't go away. We waited a few more minutes before doing anything. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to hear if someone was breathing on the other side, but all I could hear was the air conditioner and a car passing far off on the highway. We decided not to leave the room. I locked the door again, checked the manual latch, and dragged a chair over to wedge against the handle, more for psychological comfort than real effectiveness. We went back to the bed without really lying down, sitting there in silence. Neither of us could close our eyes. At every small noise from outside, my body reacted as if the card were about to touch the lock again at any moment. It didn't. The rest of the night crawled by with a constant sense of alert, as if the danger had only stepped back a little, not gone away. When it started to get light, the tension eased just enough for us to move. It was close to 6 when we finally got up. Daylight made the room feel less oppressive, but it didn't erase what had happened. We opened the door carefully, looking both ways along the outdoor corridor. There was no one there, no open doors, no sign of recent movement. The walkway was empty and silent, exactly as it had been during the night. We went straight to the front desk to talk to the manager. The same man from the night before was there, now drinking coffee, with an expression far too calm for someone hearing what we were about to tell him. We told him everything right there at the counter. The noises, the repeated attempts, the long pauses. He listened without interrupting, one hand resting on the counter, and when we finished, he said in an almost automatic tone that it couldn't have been another guest. According to him, that night only the two of us were staying in that corridor. He said there were no staff walking around overnight, and that no one had requested an extra key or complained about a door. He didn't seem surprised. He didn't seem concerned. He spoke like someone who wanted to end the conversation. My girlfriend asked if there were cameras in the corridor. He replied that there was only one camera pointed at the front desk and another at the parking lot entrance, nothing near the rooms. That immediately made me uneasy. Like the explanation was far too simple for something that clearly hadn't been. We went back to the room to grab our things with no desire to stay there another minute. That's when I saw the car. The morning light hit the driver's side directly, and I could see fresh marks near the door lock. Thin, parallel scratches as if someone had tried to force the door with something rigid. They hadn't been there the night before. I was certain of it. I ran my finger over them and felt the uneven paint, still rough. My girlfriend stood there silently staring at it, her face pale. It wasn't old damage. It wasn't our carelessness. Someone had messed with the car while we slept, during the same window of time when someone was trying to open the room door. We showed the marks to the manager before leaving. He glanced at them and said it could have been someone passing through the parking lot, maybe a former guest or someone from the road. He said it without conviction, but also without any desire to dig deeper. He didn't offer to call the police, didn't write anything down. We paid and left with the strange feeling that the place worked better when no one asked questions. We drove in silence for a long time, each of us stuck in our own thoughts. The remaining drive felt longer than it should have. The image of the door, the card sliding in and out with patience, and the marks on the card didn't fit into any simple explanation. To this day, what bothers me most isn't imagining who was on the other side of the door, but the coordination. Someone tried to get into the room for several minutes without hurry, while the car was being tampered with outside. Someone who knew we were sleeping, who had time, who could try without being interrupted. Knowing later that officially no one else was staying in that corridor only reinforces the feeling that it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't someone confusing rooms. It was someone trying to open the right room at the right time and leaving when they failed. And the idea that this happened in such an ordinary place, during a random roadside stop, is what makes the memory never lose its weight. Story 4. I was 26 years old when this happened, and I was traveling with my girlfriend through southern Texas. We were in the middle of a long trip, coming back from a wedding, and decided to stop for the night because it was already too late to keep driving safely. We chose a simple roadside motel, one of those older ones with rooms lined up along an external corridor and parking right in front. It wasn't a pleasant place, but it seemed functional enough for a few hours of sleep. We checked in quickly, grabbed the physical key, and went straight to the room. It was late at night, almost 2 a.m, and the place was far too quiet. No voices, no doors slamming, just the distant sound of the highway. The room had dim lighting, thick curtains, and an old air conditioner that made a constant noise. We locked the door automatically, more out of habit than fear, took quick showers and lay down. We were exhausted. I remember commenting that this kind of motel always gave off a strange feeling, but I fell asleep soon after. I don't know how much time passed before I woke up to the sound of the doorknob turning. It wasn't a hard yank. It was that dry sound of someone testing the door, followed immediately by a light knock. Before I could react, a male voice spoke from the other side in a normal tone. "Sorry, wrong room." The doorknob stopped moving and I heard footsteps walking away down the corridor. I stayed lying there, trying to figure out if it really had just been someone confused. At roadside motels, that happens. Tired people mixing up doors in the middle of the night. Even so, something about his tone bothered me. He didn't sound embarrassed or rushed. He sounded direct, almost too calm. My girlfriend was awake now too, looking at me in the dark. We stayed silent for a few seconds, listening to the corridor. The footsteps faded and disappeared. The air conditioner kept making its uneven noise, and the room felt too quiet again. I tried to relax, whispering that it was probably just that. Someone tired. She agreed, but didn't seem convinced. We stayed awake a few more minutes before trying to sleep again. I don't know if we actually fell asleep, because not long after we heard footsteps again. This time they weren't quick or decisive. They were slow, measured, as if someone were walking deliberately. The sound came from the same corridor approaching. My whole body went on alert. The footsteps stopped near our door. There was a heavy silence, far too long to be normal. Then the doorknob moved again. It wasn't a strong attempt, it was a controlled turn, testing. The door, of course, didn't open. My girlfriend grabbed my arm tightly and I stared at the door, waiting to hear that same voice apologizing again. It didn't come. The doorknob turned once more, a little harder, as if whoever was on the other side was confirming that it really was locked. After that, I heard a light scraping sound on the ground, followed by footsteps moving toward the side of the room. My stomach dropped when I realized he was heading toward the window. The curtain was closed, but you could clearly hear someone very close, breathing softly. This wasn't someone looking from a distance. It was someone leaning in, trying to see something through the gaps. I felt an immediate urge to get up and shout, but something held me back. The situation felt too fragile, as if any reaction could change the outcome. We stayed completely still on the bed without exchanging a word. The silence outside was broken only by the faint sound of someone moving slowly, assessing. After a few seconds, we heard footsteps moving away again, with the same calculated slowness. No words, no apology this time, just the sound fading down the corridor. We waited a long time before moving, counting seconds in our heads, trying to decide whether it was really over. The feeling wasn't relief. It was that something had been interrupted midway. After the footsteps disappeared completely, I slowly got up and went to the door without touching it. I pressed my ear against the wood, trying to catch any sound in the corridor. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no doors opening or closing. The motel felt completely empty. I went back to the bed and sat down, feeling that strange exhaustion that comes when your body is worn out but your mind won't shut off. My girlfriend asked quietly if I thought he was really gone. I said yes, but the truth was I wasn't sure of anything. The way he came back without saying a word and went straight for the doorknob, and then the window didn't fit someone who was just confused. It felt like someone resuming something that had been interrupted. We tried to sleep, but it was impossible. Every small noise made us move. The air conditioner cycling on and off sounded like footsteps. A car passing on the highway made us hold our breath. At some point, close to 4 in the morning, exhaustion took over a little, but it wasn't deep sleep. It was that state where you pass out for minutes and wake up again, always thinking you heard something. No other attempts happened that night, but the feeling of being watched didn't go away. It was as if the room had been marked somehow, and we were just waiting for the next test at the door. When it started to get light, that faint bluish light coming through the gaps in the curtain, I felt a strange relief, more physical than emotional. We got up almost at the same time, as if neither of us had really slept. We packed in silence, avoiding talking too much, maybe afraid of giving too much shape to what had happened. Before leaving, I carefully looked out the window. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered around, all parked normally. No sign of anyone lingering. We opened the room door cautiously, looking both ways down the corridor. Nothing. The corridor was exactly as it had been the night before. Empty, no marks, no signs of recent movement. That gave me a strange feeling, as if everything had been absorbed by the silence of the place. We went straight to the front desk to check out and mention what had happened. The morning clerk was someone else, younger, and seemed surprised when we said someone had tried to open our door during the night. He called the manager, who listened to the story more carefully than I expected. He asked the time, the room number, and whether the man had said anything. When I described that he had apologized first and then come back in silence, the manager sighed and said that this wasn't exactly new. He commented in a restrained tone that the police had been there a few times because of a man seen trying to enter other rooms at night. According to him, the pattern was always the same. The guy would pretend to make a mistake, leave, and then come back to test doors that had resisted. That made my stomach sink. The manager said that week they had received 2 similar complaints, always late at night, always in the same corridor or nearby ones. The man didn't break doors, didn't damage anything, he just tested. If the door was unlocked, he went in. If it was locked, he backed off and came back sometime later, as if checking whether someone had let their guard down. The police had been called on one of those nights, but when they arrived, they found no one. There was no clear camera footage, just records of someone walking slowly through the parking lot. As he spoke, I felt a strange weight in my chest, because it placed our night inside a pattern that already existed before we ever got there. I asked if they had been able to identify the man. The manager said no. They only knew he wasn't a registered guest and that he always appeared alone with no visible car. That caught my attention. A roadside motel with someone roaming rooms and no car didn't make sense. My girlfriend asked if he was still around. The manager said he hadn't been seen that morning, but that this was also common. He would appear, test doors, then vanish for days. We left the reception with the clear feeling that the place lived with this quietly, as if it were easier to pretend it was just confused people knocking on the wrong doors. When we got to the car, before getting in, I walked all the way around it out of reflex. I didn't see obvious damage, but I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Near the passenger side window, there were faint marks on the glass as if someone had rested a hand there. It was impossible to say when they'd been made, but after what we'd heard, they carried a different weight. I got into the car carefully, locked the doors, and started the engine immediately. Only when we left the parking lot and got back on the highway did I feel my body truly start to relax. For much of the drive, we rode in silence. Each of us seemed to process it differently, but neither of us could simply ignore it. The idea of someone returning specifically to doors that had offered resistance bothered me more than a direct break-in attempt. It wasn't impulse, it was persistence. Someone willing to wait, to test limits, to choose targets based on their reactions. That first sorry wasn't a mistake, it was a test. In the days that followed, the story kept coming back to my mind at random moments. Every time I locked a hotel door, every time I heard footsteps in a corridor at night, that image of the man walking away and then coming back, quieter, more focused, wouldn't leave my head. He didn't leave that night because he made a mistake. He left so he could come back the right way, and he only didn't get in because the door stayed locked the entire time. A few weeks later, out of curiosity, I looked up news about that motel in the town. I found a small note in a local paper about a man detained for questioning after complaints at motels in the area. Nothing detailed. No direct confirmation. It was impossible to know if it was the same person. Even so, reading it gave me a strange chill. Not relief, but confirmation that what happened hadn't been isolated or imagined. To this day, when I think about that night, what bothers me most isn't the immediate fear. It's the sequence. Knocking on the wrong door, apologizing, leaving, coming back in silence, testing again, looking through the window, leaving when he realizes it won't work. It didn't feel like someone drunk or lost. It felt like someone looking for exactly where it was worth insisting. Knowing that the police confirmed he did this repeatedly, always returning to where he met resistance, is the detail that makes it hardest to forget. We tend to think danger comes from impulsive acts, from sudden violence. That night taught me the opposite. Sometimes what's on the other side of the door isn't in any hurry at all. It's just waiting for the right moment when you think it's already over. And that, more than any noise in the middle of the night, is what still keeps me alert when I close a door behind me. Story 5. I was 24 years old when this happened, and I was working the night shift at a small clinic in rural Florida. I usually got out a little after 11, sometimes closer to midnight, depending on how busy it was. That particular night had been long and exhausting, and all I wanted was to stop by the 24-hour supermarket near my place to grab a few things before going home to sleep. It was one of those large grocery stores with a huge parking lot, but almost empty at that hour. When I arrived, there were maybe 5 or 6 cars scattered far apart from each other. I parked near the main entrance, as I always did, more out of habit than conscious concern for safety. The air was hot and humid, typical summer weather, and the place felt too quiet, even with the store open. As I turned off the car and grabbed my bag, I heard an engine start behind me. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a car entering the parking lot. It drove past the first row of empty spaces and stopped 2 spots away from mine, at an angle. I thought it was odd only because there was so much empty space for someone to choose to park that close. What really bothered me was realizing that the engine didn't turn off. The headlights were off as well. I stayed inside my car for a few seconds, watching. I couldn't see who was driving, just a dark silhouette behind the wheel. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that the person was probably waiting for someone. Even so, I felt that slight tightening in my stomach that comes when something doesn't quite add up. I got out of the car trying to look normal, but kept my attention on the reflection in the window. The car was still there, engine running, no visible movement. I didn't hear a door open, didn't hear a radio, nothing. The sound of the idling engine was constant, low. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder and started walking toward the entrance. As I moved away, I noticed the car shift slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if it had pulled forward just enough to get a better line of sight. It didn't speed up or draw attention. It just repositioned enough to stay pointed at me. My body reacted before my mind did. The back of my neck felt hot and my hands started to sweat. I thought about turning back to my car and leaving, but the idea of turning my back right there, in the middle of an open parking lot, felt worse. I kept walking, feeling each step heavier than it should have been. When I got close to the automatic doors, I heard the engine rev slightly behind me. It wasn't a sudden acceleration, just enough to reposition the car again. Before going inside, I glanced back. It had changed spaces. Now it was parked farther ahead, positioned so it had a direct view of the main entrance. The engine was still running. The headlights were still off. That made my stomach sink completely. I went into the store quickly, feeling the cold blast of air conditioning hit my face like a shock. I stopped just inside the entrance, pretending to look for something in my bag, just so I could watch through the glass doors. The car was still there, unmoving, as if it were waiting for something to happen. I stayed inside for a few minutes just watching, trying to decide if I was overreacting. The store was nearly empty, just 1 register open and 2 employees restocking shelves farther toward the back. I grabbed a small cart more to have something in my hands than because I needed it. As I walked through the aisles near the entrance, I kept glancing back toward the parking lot through the glass. The car didn't leave. The engine kept running, that steady sound you notice even from far away. There was no sign of anyone getting out or looking at a phone. It was just the car sitting there, in a position that felt far too deliberate to be a coincidence. I started to feel real physical discomfort, a tightness in my chest and a growing urge not to leave anytime soon. I picked up a few things I actually needed, but slowly, stretching out the time. Every time I passed near the front of the store, I checked whether the car was still there. It was. At one point, I saw it move again, just a few meters, only enough to stay aligned with the entrance as I shifted position inside the store. That was what ended any attempt at rationalizing. This wasn't someone resting in their car. It wasn't someone waiting for another shopper. It was someone watching the door. I decided I wasn't leaving anytime soon. I went to the back of the store, near the freezers, and texted a friend telling her where I was and that something felt wrong. I wandered aimlessly, pretending to compare prices while time dragged by painfully slow. Time seemed to move more slowly than normal. I checked the clock on my phone and was surprised to see only 10 minutes had passed, then 15. The car was still outside, always at the same angle, engine running the entire time. It started giving me a headache, like a constant hum. At one point, one of the employees walked past me and asked if I needed help. I almost said something, almost pointed outside, but I couldn't. I didn't want to sound paranoid, and I didn't even know how to clearly explain what was wrong. I smiled, said I was fine, and kept walking. Inside, my body was on full alert, like I was waiting for the moment I'd need to react quickly. After nearly 40 minutes inside, I started to feel embarrassed about still wandering in circles. Even so, every time I thought about going to the register, I remembered the car outside. I looked through the glass doors again. The car was still there, no change, no sign of impatience. That scared me more than if it had been coming and going. It felt like someone with unlimited time. I decided to buy a few more things just to gain more minutes. When I finally went to the register, my hands were cold, and I realized I was breathing too shallowly. While the cashier scanned my items, I kept looking over her shoulder, trying to see if the car moved. It didn't. By the time I finished paying, it had been almost an hour since I'd entered the store. I stood near the exit for a few seconds, holding the bags, trying to work up the courage. I looked through the glass doors again. The car was still there, engine running, headlights off. At that moment, I seriously considered asking an employee to walk me to my car, but before I made that decision, I saw the vehicle move. It wasn't fast. It slowly pulled out of the space, drove through the parking lot, and headed toward the exit. The engine never turned off. I watched until it disappeared onto the dark road, only then feeling my body relax a little, as if an invisible pressure had been released from my chest. I waited a few more minutes just to be sure it wouldn't come back. When I finally went out, I crossed the parking lot looking in every direction, with that feeling of being too exposed. I got into my car, locked the doors immediately, and started the engine. I sat there for a few seconds, taking deep breaths before driving away. On the way home, I tried to convince myself that maybe I had overreacted, that it could have been a coincidence, that someone had just been sitting in their car for some reason. Even so, something inside me didn't accept that explanation easily. The next day, I went to work still tired and casually told a coworker what had happened. She listened in silence, then her expression changed. She said that same night, shortly after midnight, another woman had been attacked in the parking lot of that same store. She had just gotten off work, stopped there to grab something quickly, and was approached near her car. She didn't die, but she was injured. When I heard that, a chill ran up my spine. I asked about the time. It almost exactly matched the moment I had decided not to leave the store. I spent the rest of the day with that information looping in my head. The idea that the car left just minutes before I went outside, and that someone else entered that space soon after, made me feel sick. I started wondering if the car had been there waiting for someone to walk out alone, if the repositioning was to keep a view of the door, if the patience was part of the plan. The detail about the engine never turning off began to make sense in a way I didn't want it to. It wasn't someone parked. It was someone ready to leave fast. In the days that followed, police showed up at the store a few times. I saw patrol cars in the parking lot, people talking near the entrance. I never spoke to anyone officially, but I watched from a distance. The car was never identified. There was no plate, no clear description, just vague reports of a vehicle sitting with its engine running at odd hours. That made me realize how easy something like that is to overlook. A parked car doesn't draw attention. An idling engine doesn't draw attention. It only does when you're alone and have time to watch. Now, whenever I park in a large lot at night, I pay attention to things I used to completely ignore. How cars are positioned, whether someone changes spaces without a clear reason, whether an engine stays on too long. It isn't constant fear, it's vigilance. That night taught me that danger doesn't always come quickly. Sometimes it waits, watches, adjusts its position, and only acts when it thinks no one is paying attention. Knowing that someone else didn't have the same luck of having an open store to hide in is something that still weighs on me. And every time I hear an engine running in the dark, stopped for too long, my body remembers before my mind does. Story 6. I was 34 years old when this happened, and I lived alone in a small town in rural Indiana. It was the kind of place where everyone recognizes each other. Streets go quiet after 8 at night, and there's practically no movement after midnight. I worked early mornings and had a very predictable routine. That night was no different. I had dinner, watched a bit of TV, and went to bed before 11. My house was a single-story place, simple, with the front door opening directly onto the street and low windows. I always locked everything before going to sleep, more out of habit than fear. There was no reason to think anything could happen there. The neighborhood was far too quiet for that. I woke up in the middle of the night to a dry, repeated sound coming from the front of the house. It took me a few seconds to understand what it was because I was still half asleep. When the noise happened again, I realized clearly someone was messing with the front door handle. It wasn't a knock, it was the sound of the handle being turned forcefully, like someone was testing whether the door was locked. My entire body woke up instantly. I stayed still in bed, trying to listen more carefully. The handle moved again, this time for longer, accompanied by a slight creak as the door was pulled. It went on for several seconds straight, unhurried, as if whoever was outside was certain they had time. I got out of bed slowly, trying not to make any noise. The bedroom was dark and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, loud enough to seem too noisy for the silence. The handle kept being forced, now in short, repeated movements like someone adjusting their grip and trying again. I didn't hear any voice, no request, no curse, just the metal turning and snapping back. I moved away from the bedroom door, stepping carefully on the cold floor, and leaned against the hallway wall. I thought about grabbing my phone, but the idea of the screen lighting up stopped me. Everything in me said to stay invisible, to give no sign that someone was awake inside. The attempt at the door stopped suddenly. I didn't hear footsteps moving away right away. There was a silence that lasted too long to be comforting. I stayed frozen, barely breathing, waiting for the sound to return. A few seconds later, I heard the handle turn once more, this time with less force, like a final test. After that, nothing. No sound of a door slamming, no footsteps walking away down the sidewalk, just the silence of the empty street seeping into the house. I remained hidden, pressed against the wall for several minutes, trying to understand whether it was over or if the person was still there, standing outside listening. I waited a long time before moving. I can't say how long because I didn't want to check the clock or touch my phone. I stood there, feeling the cold floor under my feet, ears tuned to anything out of place. The house made its normal nighttime noises, wood contracting, pipes shifting, and each one made me tense. At some point, I thought I heard a step outside, but I wasn't sure. What bothered me most was not having heard anyone leave. There was no sound of footsteps fading away, no car starting. It was as if the person had simply stopped making noise, not necessarily stopped being there. I went back to the bedroom only when my legs started to ache from standing so long. I locked the bedroom door, even knowing it wouldn't make much difference, and sat on the floor with my back against the bed. I didn't sleep again that night. I alternated between listening for the front door and looking at the bedroom window, expecting to see a shadow pass by. Nothing happened. The silence remained unbroken until it started to get light outside. When the faint morning light came through the window, I felt a strange, incomplete relief. It wasn't the feeling that it was over. It was just the certainty that I had survived that part. When daylight fully arrived, I finally worked up the courage to leave the bedroom. I walked through the house slowly, checking every room as if I expected to find someone inside. Nothing was out of place. The front door was still locked with no obvious signs of forced entry. Even so, the handle was slightly crooked, a tiny thing, but I was sure it hadn't been like that the night before. I touched it carefully and felt that it was loose, as if it had been forced repeatedly. I opened the door just enough to look outside. The street was empty, lit by the weak morning sun, exactly like any other day. No visible footprints, no strange car, no neighbors watching. That gave me an odd feeling, almost worse than if I'd found something obvious. Everything looked too normal for what had happened just hours earlier. I tried to follow my routine to calm myself down. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared out the front window while I drank, more alert than ever to any movement. The neighborhood slowly woke up. A car passed, then another. A neighbor stepped out to get the newspaper, all normal. It was only later, with the sun higher, when I went to the door to take out the trash, that I saw the man. He was across the street, standing near a tree, looking straight at my house. He wasn't pretending to check his phone, wasn't looking around. He was just watching. He was a man I didn't recognize, wearing simple clothes with a posture far too relaxed for someone standing there without reason. When our eyes met, he didn't look surprised. He stayed there a few more seconds, as if confirming something, then turned and walked away calmly down the street without any hurry. I stood there staring at the spot where he'd been, trying to understand what that meant. My first instinct was to think he was just a curious neighbor, someone who had heard a noise overnight or seen police activity. But that didn't explain the way he was standing, nor the fact that he was looking directly at my house, not the street as a whole. It also didn't explain what had happened at the door hours earlier. The image of a hand forcing the handle came back fully into my mind, and the cold feeling I got was the same as in the middle of the night. That didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like continuation, as if he had come back just to see the result of what he'd tried. Whether the door had opened, whether someone had come out, whether there was any sign of life inside. I spent the rest of the morning unsettled. Every time I went to the window, I automatically looked both ways down the street, expecting to see the man again. He didn't return. Even so, the feeling of being watched didn't go away. I called a friend and told him what had happened, trying to sound rational. He said I should call the police, at least to make a report. I thought about it, but something held me back. I had no way to prove anything beyond a forced handle and a man standing in the street looking. It sounded like very little, almost silly when put into words. Still, I knew it had been real. It wasn't fear without cause. It was the sum of details that together didn't make sense any other way. After he left, I tried to convince myself that it had ended there, that maybe the attempt at the door and the man in the street weren't connected. Even so, something in me knew I was lying to calm myself down. The timing, his posture, the way he walked away without any hurry, it all fit too well with what had happened during the night. The feeling wasn't of immediate danger, but of evaluation. Like someone had tried something, hadn't gotten a response, and came back just to check the outcome. In the early afternoon, I finally called the local police. An officer came by, looked at the handle, asked a few questions, and wrote everything down in a notebook. He said that technically, there wasn't much to do beyond documenting it. He asked if I recognized the man from the morning. I said no. He commented that sometimes people test empty houses or try doors thinking no one is home. He said it in a neutral, almost automatic tone. Before leaving, he recommended changing the lock and staying alert. Nothing he said contradicted how I felt, but it also didn't explain the behavior of someone who came back just to look. I changed the lock that same week. I installed a motion sensor light at the front of the house and started locking everything more carefully than before. Even so, what changed the most was my behavior. I began noticing things I had never paid attention to on that street. Who walked by without a clear destination, who stood still for too long, who looked at houses without an apparent reason. The town was still calm, but for me it had lost that automatic layer of innocence. I had learned the hard way how silence can be used as a tool. A few days later, I ran into an older neighbor at the grocery store and casually mentioned that someone had tried my door during the night. She got serious and said that weeks earlier, someone had done the same thing at the house of a young man 2 streets over. They hadn't gotten in, just forced the handle. No one ever found out who it was. That reinforced the sense of a pattern. It wasn't random. Someone was testing houses, schedules, reactions, and the fact that the man had appeared afterward in broad daylight just to look took on an even heavier meaning. As time passed, the memory of that night became less intense, but it never truly disappeared. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I still wake up thinking I heard the handle move. Other times during the day, I catch myself staring out the front window without realizing it. What bothers me most isn't imagining what would have happened if the door had opened. It's thinking that for that person, forcing entry wasn't the main goal. It was knowing whether someone was there, knowing whether the house was occupied, knowing whether someone had survived the silence. When I think about the man standing across the street, the detail that stays with me most isn't his face. It's the calm. He didn't run when he realized I saw him. He didn't explain himself. He didn't quicken his pace. He just left, like someone who had completed a simple task. That makes me think he wasn't there out of curiosity. He was there to confirm something very specific. Today, whenever I hear similar stories of doors being tested or people circling houses at odd hours, I believe them. Not because I'm paranoid, but because I know how it happens. It doesn't come with noise or clear threats. It comes with patience, with someone willing to wait in the dark and return later, just to see if there's still a sign of life. What happened to me didn't involve a confrontation, a chase, or a clear resolution. Just a silent attempt and an even quieter confirmation afterward. And sometimes, that's exactly what's most frightening. Knowing that someone was there, tried to get in, couldn't, and came back just to check if you were still alive.
Thank you very much for your company until the end. Your support is what gives life to this channel. If these stories have caught you, don't forget to leave your like and comment on your opinion. And if you are not yet part of our community, Sign up now to receive the next real horror stories.